you're going to be in there with your friends, so make sure you lock the door. From a safety standpoint, we got exits here and here, and then there's also an AED machine right outside the door on the left, which is something that goes along with that. And then if there is anything else, 911, and we're all at Amherst Elementary. So tonight we're going to have a meeting of the Amherst Village Residents Association, and we're going to speak about the warranty deed reviews. So that's a mouthful. We're going to try and keep it to AVRA from here on out. If it seems scripted, that's intentional. We're doing that because everything that we do here tonight is going to be posted. There's probably 700 more people that are interested in seeing and hearing all of this. So we're trying to keep it all on paper so that everybody has access down the road. There is a sign-in sheet running around. It's up front here. It's a yellow sheet. Please make sure you get your name, address, and email on there so we can get in touch with you down the road. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yeah, turn it up to the mic.
A little bit? All right. Sorry for the rest of you all. Next slide, we got the agenda tonight. Right now I'm going through kind of the welcome and the introductions. Then Jeff Inskeep's going to get up and talk about why we are here. Next two items are going to be handled by Bill Streetman. He's going to be doing a kind of what does the AVRA do, and also talk about the revised deed restrictions. Then we also get reserve study. Art Wickerham is here tonight, and he's the engineer that performed the reserve study for us. And then I'm going to talk about the impact of that reserve study and what it means to every one of us in this room. Renee Hunt's going to be going over the 2014-15 fiscal year budget. Karen Spiller, too many people here, is going to go what's next and what happens after we move on from this meeting. We'll wrap up with some, if we have time, questions, and then Jeff has some comments to close us out with. Introductions. We're glad that you all came tonight. Jeff Inskeep is our president. Karen Spiller is the secretary. Renee Hunt is the treasurer. Bill Streetman is the director. And I'm Wesley Gerbic, the vice president, and still the new guy for those of you that were even here in August. A couple of thank yous. The families of the board. We've put a ton of time into this, and it wouldn't be possible without our families. If they didn't have the support, we'd probably all be sharing a tent city at the pool. So Colleen Streetman, I don't think she is here. Matt Spiller, not yet. Spencer Hunt, taking care of the kids. All right, Lynn Inskeep, she was out there doing pool memberships. And then my wife Heidi is home taking care of sick kids. Another thank you. Warranty Deeds Review Committee. This was a group that we brought together after last year's meeting. They spent a ton of time working on this as well, providing us with some great feedback. They are Dave Cooch, Ron Walker, Rand Paslick, Passell, sorry, Peggy Skiba, Gary Doon, John Marmula, and Warren Shy. So thank you to all your hard work on that. Another thank you, Andrew and Amy Streetman. Andrew's a second generation resident. He grew up here and now he's back. He owns a local IT company and has been providing all of our IT support graciously, free of charge to us. And without that, we wouldn't be as far along as we are at this point. And we're hoping it just keeps getting better. We've spent a lot of the week trialing, getting documents to the members only area. So look for that to be coming soon. Another thank you to all of you. We're here talking about stuff, and that's great, and it's business that we need to take care of. But at the end of the day, Amherst is about the people. So thank you. Without you, none of this would be possible, period. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Special guest tonight, we have Art Wickerham from Criterion Liskey Engineers. He performed the reserve study for us and is going to come up here and give us a few details about that in a few moments. Other business to talk about. Made some notes here if you've got them. Cleanup Amherst is going to be May 10th. Greg McGannon is kind of helping to kick that off at Metzger Park. And then we'll also be at the pool working on that and the general grounds in that area. Nominations for the board, if you would like to take one of our jobs. Nominations are open through May 10th. You just need to send us an email that you are interested in, and then also include a short bio so that we can post that to the website so everybody knows who you are. In addition, all of our bios are posted to the website. So if not yet, will be shortly. So if you want to know who we are and what we do and what we like and what we dislike, feel free to look there shortly and we'll have all that. And then right now we're looking at an annual meeting of June 12th. And that will close out a lot of, that will kick us off for the next year. Questions? We're short on time tonight, and like I said, we're trying to keep this reasonably scripted so that we can have it all on paper for everybody. If you have questions, please write them down on a piece of paper. If you didn't bring paper or a pencil, there's green sheets down the center aisle. Please bug your neighbor until you get one and something to write on. Just jot your questions down. We will collect them at the end. Once we have all the questions, we're going to be putting together a giant document that tries to address all of the issues that everyone has. That document will be passed out to all the residents along with the deed restrictions and one other thing. And the budget. That's it. Thank you. If we do have time for questions, we'd ask that you please stand, tell us your name, where you live, and then ask your question, and we'll do our best to answer it. Okay, so before we dive into this, I want to do a little fun facts and get everybody moving a little bit. We have a great community, and one of the things that is very obvious is people move here and they tend to stay here. And so what I did is I kind of did a little statistical analysis. I'm an engineer, I'm a geek, I'm sorry. And tried to look at this from how long have people lived in Amherst. So when I call your group, I want you to please stand up and we'll see how close our sampling here is to the, the AVRA as a whole. First group, you've been here 0 to 5 years, you are a youngling, and that represents 14% of the population. So 2009 to 2014 is when you moved in. You're new to the neighborhood, and you're just kind of learning the ways of Amherst and what it has to offer to you. Next group, 6 to 15 years, you are the Padawans. 39%. You're in the throes of your Amherst adventure. Next group, 16 to 25 years. So you moved here in 1989 to 1998. You are the Jedi Knights of the group. You're the experts. You can share your knowledge with the rest of us, the newer of us. And lastly, the Jedi Masters. You moved here in 1988. You are the wise sages of the neighborhood. And most often start sentences with, I remember when. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Jeff now, and he's going to give us a little background on why we are here.
Thank you, Wes. It's good having some younger, what group were you in? Younglings?
That would be Padawan.
Padawan, okay. I'll remember that. That will cost you later. Anyway, why are we here tonight? I'm going to tell you a statement that I really don't like, but the AVRA has one common property, and it just happens to be the pool. By Ohio law, your membership in the AVRA makes you responsible for any common property. It's just like you live in a condominium, and whether or not you use the pool there the owners of the whole area are responsible. Now, I really hate that statement. I really do, and please don't take offense by that, because that's not what I'm trying to do here tonight. It's the truth, and you know, I don't like being told what I have to do either. So I'm right in here with you. I'm a resident. Bill tonight, wherever he ran off to, is going to give us some details tonight about what the AVRA does. But before we get to that, I need to give you a little history on, well, maybe shed some light on where the AVRA has been. I don't know if you know this, but in the beginning, Nationwide Development Company really set the neighborhood up, and they did a pretty good job of setting it up. They made the association a corporation, and they included warranty deeds with each property. We just recently posted those online, so you can kind of go in and search which deed covers your property. And they also had in place a one-time $50 association member fee. Now, keep in mind back then, residents were working for Nationwide, and many of them were here for a short time, kind of like these younglings, and they came in, and then they trained them, and they got them the heck out. That meant there was a lot more home turnover in the neighborhood, and they really figured that on the base of the number of homes they've been selling, that their funding plan of $50 times the number of homes they were turning every year would cover any expenses we needed for the AVRA. Well, if they had built an inflation clause into that, that would have been better. Actually, at $50 today would be about $477 in dollars today. There has been 2 historical attempts to fix the past financial problems. The 1999-2000 AVRA board did organize and implement a revision to the warranty deeds. They went door to door, just like we're going to have to do now, and collected positive signatures from a majority of the residents to change the $50 one-time fee to the current $200 fee. And this was filed with the Franklin County Recorder August 8th, 2000. Now, if you think about that, that was probably, we've got to go out and get signatures. That was an easy sell, because think about it, it didn't affect the current owner's pocketbook. Okay, you come to the door and it's going to only affect the people moving in, so that was it. That was real easy to get those signatures. In 2006, the board issued a special $75 assessment. That money was used for heating repairs and maintenance of the pool. To make that money go as far as it could, the board relied on volunteers to do some of the work. We did some of them. There's some volunteers. Is that you, Rand? That's you. They did things like prepare the pool sides for pool plaster, and that pool plaster would never need to be painted. One thing we were dealing with, that pool paint was costing $200 a gallon. We want to get away from that. So pool plaster was a cost-saving idea, and we put a lot of other cost-saving ideas. I shouldn't say we, they did. I wasn't on the board then. The pool members at that time were willing to accept the responsibility for the operational budget of the pool, and actually covered some of the capital expenses through their memberships, and also we did a lot of fundraisers to help get money into the association. The reality is that this was not sustainable, and needed maintenance and repairs were not being addressed because the costs were prohibitive. Further, in 2010, the state of Ohio put rules in place for homeowners association. One rule requires a reserve fund to cover ongoing maintenance and repairs of common property. The state did this so that members aren't presented with special assessments for something that would need to be done with a common property. So tonight we ask you to keep an open mind, and Wes will be going into more detail what this means to you. You may have noticed also in our presentation tonight that we actually don't have deed restrictions. The correct terminology is amendment to the warranty deeds. We actually have warranty deeds. All 908 properties in the Andrews Village corporate area have warranty deeds, and each warranty deed has restrictions that you probably read your particular copy, and it includes other language governing our operation or association. One aspect of being compliant with the state law is to have the AVRA operational records available for residents to review. I personally have been putting together what I call a library. Now, trust me, it's not a big thing, but I have assembled meeting notes, financials, and other historical records from 2005 to 2013 into a series of binders. Actually, I've got sitting up here on the table here. We're really trying trying to get that up to date. We're going to be putting all the 2014 stuff in there once we get to it here, get through some of these meetings here. And this information is currently being maintained, which is real important, with our agent, which is Andy Watkins at Watkins & Associates. He's located up at the corner at the Flag Center. You can call Andy anytime to set up an appointment to view the main information. A board member will have to be there because we need to make sure that we can ensure its integrity. We don't want anything getting out of order. Sorry for all this, but we got to get through a couple of these things. I have also, to let you know, I have made 2 sets of the meeting notes, which one of them is still out on loan, the other one's back in here. That way, rather than come in and sit with me, you can go out and check that out. If you want to see a historical account of what's happened in the past, at least since 2005, you can check that out, just like a library book. Eventually, we're going to put all that information online also, too. Many of you were probably at the meeting, August 2013, and at that meeting we heard many thoughts as to what the next step should be. You've heard that we made a deed restriction committee, and they're sitting over here today. The AVRA has incorporated these recommendations as well as advice from our attorney, who, by the way, is specializing in homeowners associations, and put input from the engineering study from ART, and came up with the current warranty deed revisions. I still want to thank you guys for putting your work into that. You've really done a great job. Orrin Scheid, who isn't here tonight, Sharon, you're out here, right? How's Orrin doing? He fell and had major surgery. Is he okay?
He's liking his pain medicine.
Pain medicine, okay. Well, I wish I had some of that pain medicine right now, but he can't be here tonight. But if he was here, he could tell you how much fun, would you call it fun, that they had debating the drafts and revisions. So tonight you will hear from the engineer who assessed our property's maintenance and repair needs for the next 20 years, which is the foundation of the proposed annual assessment. We will discuss that and what that entails, present a draft budget for upcoming fiscal year, and describe what members can expect next, and how the process to update the warranty deeds will work. But Bill will first get into the main part of the program, is what the AVRA does. Mr. Streetman, Willie. Right, sir.
Thank you. I want to make one quick point that what the AVRA does, which of course is the 908 of us. Can you hear okay if I don't use the mic?
No.
Oh. Okay. I'll use the mic. So the AVRA, by that I don't mean the Board of Trustees, I mean the 908 homes that are part of the Amherst Village Residents Association. We've been through this before when Nationwide set up the community, established a homeowners association, and it is the collection of all 908 homes within this specially defined political area that is the AVRA. Go ahead, one forward. Again, Jeff kind of touched on this stuff, but right within the deed, the wording says, whereas Amherst Village Residents Association is a corporation consisting of all owners in the association, and as such, is the representative of all owners. So, again, setting up the fact that we are this group, and in order to do the things, some of which we're going to highlight here in a second, that we do over the course of a year for ourselves, for our children, for our families, we do elect a board of trustees that is responsible for protecting and managing the assets that we all have, and working to enhance both the property values and the quality of life within our community. That's the mission of the people that get elected to be the board of trustees every year. And they manage these things on our behalf. So some of these responsibilities, again, we've covered it, providing ongoing care and maintenance of the pool and the property, budgets associated with that, both operating budgets and long-term capital type budgets, planning for the property, for paying the property tax and the utilities and the proper maintenance, as well as staffing it, and then ensuring that our association is compliant with all state regulations of both homeowners associations or other events. So, because we own this property, and because we have this mission of the 908 of us, here are some of the things that we do during the year that we don't even probably remember or think about. And it's just good to think about them as we look and decide and evaluate what we are and who we are. We do things like the 5th grade regatta, and it comes out of this school. I know my kids participated in it. I know some here have and some will soon. Others, I'm sure, have done that. That's one of the things that we help sponsor, the AVRA, and the board enacts on behalf of the AVRA. The Egg Hunt, we just had that recently, the Spring Festival, for kids ages 3 to 12. And again, all members of AVRA are welcome to come and participate in this. So you don't have to be a member of the pool or anything like that. We use the facility to promote book club and garden club, and some of you know the community garden that we grow on the side of the pool there. These are the kind of things that, again, people are in the book club's invited to come and use the facility to have their meeting. Movie nights, game nights, these things are popular. OSU football night, very popular. Again, open to all AVRA members, so whether you're a pool member or not, that day in October when it's nice and crisp outside and you get all the wood-burning fire pits going, and the big screen TV in the game, and it's usually a great time. And it's something that we just do as a community also. Of course, the Steak and Ale and Lollapalooza parties, I don't know if that's even spelled right, but those are big events, again, open to anybody in the community that wants to come and participate. There's a fee, of course, food and drink and stuff comes with it. Water aerobics and volleyball. Yeah, you have to be a pool member to do water aerobics, but again, that's something that a lot of, especially a certain demographic within our community, choose to do because it's good exercise. Open swim day, I guess by definition, something that's open to all the members of the association to come in, swim, and see if participating in the pool is something that they'd like to do on a regular basis. And of course, the ever popular Visits with Santa, another thing that's open to anybody that cares to come and participate. Swim team, swim lessons, these are integral parts of the pool, and yes, people are members that participate here, but picture from 1975 of, I would have been 19 years old then, probably looked a lot like that guy. Yeah, I do. Coordination within the politics of Westerville. This is something that different boards have done over the years. Some of the people in here that I know are past presidents have done this before too. Issues like the Tim Hortons that was going to open on the corner of Cleveland and Maine, the Granby extension. Issues like this are the things that people in the community ask the AVRA to go and look at on their behalf, and of course we assign that to the Board of Trustees to go out and do. So going to council meetings, listening on the latest plans, petitioning the mayor or some of the council members for information. This is stuff that the AVRA does and charges the board to go do. And then these things really happen. Some people, through some of the social media sites, people have generated this on their own. Plus there's some things that we do organized-wise, like the yard sale. But bulk purchasing, I know on my street, several people went together and had their driveways replaced at a cheaper price by doing it as a group. And that's something that people are just starting to investigate, doing more as the AVRA itself. We did have something here, Columbia Gas, because of some connections we had. We've given away free energy audits to people in Amherst, and then gave $20 as a gift toward the association. That's something that we were able to negotiate with them. And lastly here, something to remember that so many of the folks that work at the pool or on behalf of the folks that utilize these benefits are our kids, are our children. They get paid to work here, so they get paid to work in the city, in the neighborhood that they grew up in. They spend money that they earn here in this community. They stay out of trouble here in this community, things like that. So I think that's, and is that right, Jeff, 47%? So just a little peek at some of the things that the 908 of us do, whether we do it individually or do it, if people do it on our behalf, whether we participate in that or not. Those are things that are available to us because of our association. But the next thing that's up here, I think, is a look at these warranty deeds and the language that has been drafted from a lot from the input of the review committee, a lot of input from 908, the 908 group that aren't part of the review committee, and a lot of work by the Board of Trustees. What do we like to do? It's going to go through, there's a couple of slides up front, but then go through section by section. Again, just for history, the deed is a written document or instrument conveying the interest you have in a property. We use a warranty deed, just the type here for Amherst. Nationwide developed Amherst, transferred 910 warranty deeds, 908 of them to the people who bought homes, and 2 of them for the properties that make up this section of the school were deeded to the AVRA. So, as acknowledged, been a lot of discussion over the years, both for and against, the needs, the approaches, the styles, the directions, to argue about what the real problems are, and if that's a real problem, what a real solution is, and there's been a lot of discussion, all of it great, I think, especially when it stays on the intellectual level and we examine these things. Some added complications on June 10th. A law was signed by Governor Strickland regulating homeowners associations. Some of that affects us, both in terms of how things are documented and this notion that Jeff mentioned about a reserve fund to pay for ongoing repairs and replacements of the assets owned by the association. Okay, now, this is where your eyes will get really tired, your brain will get really tired, and you'll feel like an attorney when you're done. No offense to any attorneys. But this thing comes in several sections, and I've just tried to chunk it out in sections so we can look at it. Those sections tend to deal with topics that we're familiar with. The annual fee, the one-time closing fee, rules and regulations, things like that. But in the beginning, and this is exactly as the lawyer explained it to me, our lawyer explained it to me, there's 13 deeds that any one of your properties may apply to any one of your properties. 13 versions. They're essentially the same deed. But paragraph 1, clause B in Rand's may be paragraph 2, clause C in someone else's. So this first bit of language here is an attempt to identify all the different deeds by names and dates as they were recorded in Franklin County. And then the attempt is to sort of put everything on an equal playing ground. You don't really ever delete something out of a deed. You kind of strike it and replace it with other language, but it always kind of exists in its striked mode. It's another legal thing I don't understand, but what this is basically orients our 13 deeds all in the same direction. So it's pretty much just legal background. Then we get into Article 1. Article 1 talks about making changes to, or restrictions, or any changes to the covenants, obligations, rights, uses, and provisions, and so on, that bind the grantee, the person who has the deed, and its successors. These rules can't be changed or rewritten without written consent of at least 51% of the then owners in good standing. This rule was, or this clause was written differently in the beginning, and the review committee came back and said, we recommend 51% be achieved through a written consent and not an affirmative vote for written consent. So the language was struck and rewritten in the way that met their suggestion. So in this case again, owners in good standing may vote, if at least 51% of the owners in good standing vote on something, then we can make a change, a future change. Article 2. This has to do with the closing fee. The fee is collected at the closing of the home sales payable by the new home buyer. What the review committee supported an increased membership fee, quote, as high as $500, and recommended that new homeowners receive a free pool membership with their paid closing fee. Sort of a way of saying, great, we'll increase that fee, but because it's paying more, current fee is what, $200. So this raise being, they felt it was a substantial enough raise that we should do something back, and so we're giving out these free pool memberships, which the new home buyer has 2 seasons to use. So if you happen to move in the middle of summer or the end of summer, even in winter, and you can't really use the pool membership at that time, you have 2 seasons to use it, which is pretty good. Obviously, and I think behind the committee there, one of the rationale there was, if people move in and you get them to use the pool, they may join, and if they join, the more join, you know, the better off it is financially, the less likely that costs will affect increasing the rates on that. Okay, this section here, your eyes are fine. I did that on purpose because this section is the part that deals with the annual fee. It's tied into, how did the annual fee come about? I mean, how is it set? $60 proposed here, it says. Wes is going to walk you through that along with the engineer that did the reserve study to show you how a great part of the financials get made up that produce this $60 a year annual fee. The exact language for this, and because a lot of feedback that came from the review committee, they supported a fixed annual fee that would be renewed after 5 years, or it could be renewed after 5 years, or go away. They were very concerned about placing controls, increasing the annual fee with a board of trustees. They were very concerned about that, and they were also recommended that day passes be given to each member paying their annual fee. Again, as a way of saying, great, this is something new, you're now paying a fee, we'll give you 2 free pool passes to use because family passes too. So the need for, and it's really quite a good deal. Especially for the family twice per couple. They suggest an annual fee somewhere between the $50 and $100. One of the things that we did when we looked at the models that were built, that Wes built and the engineer built, is that if you put in too much money up front, it's great, you build up a nice reserve, but then you keep building it over time. It's more money than we actually needed. And you end up with a reserve fund that's bigger than I personally, this is just my opinion now, and some others that I talked to, I personally don't want to see a reserve of $500,000 or something sitting there. We don't need that kind of money sitting around. We don't need it. So $60 was set because, as Wes was showing in the models, we're able to meet obligations both short-term and long-term. The balance kind of comes up and down over time, but it works for us, and he can show you that. So I can't show you the exact language. Jeff, we have it just coming from the attorney now, right?
We can get back to review today, and they pretty much know what we're going to do with it. And I think once they can look at it, they'll give us a consensus.
The idea being that it's $60. It's really tied to this reserve study report. If things go according to the reserve study report, that's a good number. However, things happen, sometimes things shift, come forward, backward a little bit. A repair that's scheduled to happen, I guess repairs don't happen when they're scheduled, but if it's scheduled to happen 2 years from now, or it's forecast that way, it happens this year, or vice versa, then some monies can move back and forth. But we as AVRA grant then the board the right to increase no more than 5% in a year, or it can be decreased if it should be decreased, and can't change from that unless 51% of the association members vote to change it. The wording on that last one will be complete in the next several days. Say next week, it'll be posted. You'll get plenty of chance to see it. It will be the language that will be in the final version that goes around, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to see it online. We'll post it. If you don't have a way to get it online, just give a call to one of us. We can make sure that you see it. The next article, this is pretty much a restatement of things that are already in the deed, but it says that the cost of pool maintenance, repair, operations, will exceed the allocated budget, annual budget, and therefore we have a right to charge membership fees, which obviously we do for people. And we try to tie the membership fee for things like the operational budget, wages, chemicals, utilities, and so on, such that that covers the cost of all of those things, and then some. The board, the review committee recommended recommended that the AVR Board of Trustees explore additional fee schedules, especially at rates that will attract families and allow more of the association members to participate at the pool. And we've done that this year, and you can hear from some others later or see the members, Morris setting up members right out here right now, how that's taken effect. And again, if you sign up, we have just one plan. If you sign up at pre-season, like right now, it comes with a free $20 snack card. So it's another incentive to sign up now. This last one, or this, not last one, but this section deals with providing insurance, directors and officers type insurance for the officers and Board of Trustees. Kind of standard in all business or association board kind of involvements, so that unless I willfully do something, use my individual willful malfeasance to do something, I'm not responsible for, or I am indemnified rather by the association for actions that might happen. I say I because I'm a board member. The day I'm not a board member, that won't be true anymore. This is something that I'm quite surprised that I decided I agreed to serve anyway without this being in place, just because there's a lot at risk personally. So it's something that any board would have, and our attorney can't believe we don't have that already. This section here is a lot to do with insurance, and you see it, maintain hazard insurance, liability insurance, flood insurance. These are languages that are pretty much in the new state law, and so it's just brought across into our warranty deed so that it reflects state law. This section was a very hotly debated one. Obviously, the rules. The board, the review committee, again, felt strongly that Westerville and the state of Ohio provide sufficient rules on neighborhood maintenance and an acceptable standard, so that they didn't see a need for the association to have any rules. None came to mind at the moment, at least. The only thing is that there would at least be a provision for a rule that could be put in place if 51% of the people in the association vote for it in a written vote. So the grass police, the garbage can police, all of that's not part of what the AVRA and the elected Board of Trustees are concerned with. The review committee and said, and we've accepted that Westerville and the state of Ohio provide sufficient coverage in this area. So those are the main clauses of the warranty deed. What they deal with, what they are, whether it's in terms of the dollars and cents or the approach or what they include or don't include. Like I say, and we've said all along, a lot of this comes directly from the review committee, but I know that they also received a lot of feedback from people in the community. So in a way, this reflects a lot of the 908 homes in the association, and it should give you a very clear picture, even in legalese, of what is being proposed in the warranty deed. Okay. Jeff? Art. Art. Okay. Yeah, it does say Art. Well, since I just met you today, Art, I've admired your work all along, and worked with your stuff.
Okay, thank you. My name's Art Wickerham, and I'm an engineer with a company called Criterion Bliskay Engineer. We happen to be in Gahanna. Just happen to be. We do reserve studies all over the state of Ohio, where our territory goes from Circleville to Lake Erie, and Pennsylvania to Indiana. So we do more reserve studies in our office than any of the other 56 Criterion offices in the country. So we get around to do a lot of reserve studies. And most communities did not do reserve studies until 2004. Every time they needed money, they did a special assessment. And the people I hear from the lawyers up north is the big condos along the lake. They were getting hit with $25,000 per unit per year. and the people complained. They said, why can't you plan for some of this stuff that you know is going to happen? And they said, okay, we're getting a lot of complaints and they're all voters, so we ought to do something. And so in 2004, for condos, they passed a law that said, you need to put aside enough money into a separate reserve fund for the replacement and repair of capital items to eliminate the need of a special assessment. Nowhere does it say you have to do a reserve study. But the board said, well, how much is enough? Obviously, we weren't doing a good job all along, so how much is enough? And that's what a reserve study does. Somebody comes in that's independent, that does these things a lot. People say, well, we have a retired CPA that lives here, he'll do them. And the answer is, but he lives there and everybody knows where he lives. So he's not going to recommend anything, okay? So nobody knows where I live. So we come up and we go around and we don't look at everything, we look at all the capital items. And that's what we did here. And so you're not a condo, so that law didn't apply. So in 2009, along comes the state and says, we need to do the same thing for homeowners associations so that they have the same problem. They have capital items that need to be maintained, and it takes a lot of money to maintain these capital items. So when we talked here, the thing that was mentioned earlier, I wrote down, you've really got two pots of money. I don't know what the slide says. Anyway, I'll get back to that. Yeah. We have two pots of money. One of them is just operating expenses. Somebody's got to cut the grass. Somebody's got to buy the chemicals. Those aren't capital items. Those are operating expenses. So we have a pot of money for that, and we have a pot of money for capital. And that's what the reserve study looks at, is capital items, and we normally define a capital item as something that costs more than $1,000. If it's under $1,000, you just go out and expense it, you buy it, you buy a new door, buy a new lock, but if you need a new roof, it's a capital item. So why did we do the reserve fund? It's a legal obligation. The state of Ohio has said you need to be putting aside enough money to take care of all these capital items. It's the board's responsibility to do this. And while we do the reserve fund, as I said, we give information to the board of how long stuff is going to last and what it's going to cost to take care of it. The other thing that's happening in 2010, the banking industry said, if the community doesn't take care of its assets, the value of the property goes down. And if the value of the property goes down, people walk, and the banks get stuck with the property. So the Fannie, Freddie, and now FHA have come out and said, if you want to get a loan to buy into one of these communities, the communities need to be financially, what they call fully funded. Meaning, you're putting away enough money to take care of everything you own. And we're finding realtors that are not taking people to communities that are not fully funded because they don't want to be caught in the middle of recommending a place that's going to be upside down. So the banks, they ask a lot of times to see a copy of the reserve study before they'll give a loan out to somebody to buy into the community. So when we do the study, things happen that we can't predict. Okay, so there's a chance there could be a special assessment. You get a tornado comes through, takes out the pool house, unplanned for, you could need a capital assessment, but you should have some insurance to help defray the cost of that, but we can't plan for any of these unforeseen assessments. So we look at everything at predictable maintenance. And having the reserve fund actually enhances the value of the property because people want to move into a place they know is financially sound. They don't want to move into a place that is upside down, the buildings are falling down, everything around it, they can't get to the pool because the parking lot's all messed up, the fences are falling down because there's no money to take care of it. And that's where, when you get in trouble, if you don't have money to take care of the property, it falls down. And so there's a special formula for how you do these reserve studies. There's a group called CAI that dictates how these studies are put together. So we just don't come in and make up numbers. There's a way of actually doing all these projections that we have to take into account. You want to flip that? So actually, 5312 is the Ohio law, if you want to look it up and read the whole thing. But it says that the board will adopt reserves in the amount adequate to repair and replace major capital items in the normal course of operations without the special assessment. So that's why we do the special study, the reserve studies, is to tell them, here's all the items that you need to be thinking about. And people say, but we know it's there, we see it every day. And let me tell you, when I walk around and do these studies, people, they just don't look at everything. They're so familiar with the property, they don't look at everything that's there and realize that some of the stuff that they think is going to last forever doesn't last forever. Nothing lasts forever. So this is what we do. The study looks, we go through everything that we can find at the site. This is just couldn't get it all on the slide. I mean, the thing just goes on and on for all the different things that are here. You have the pool equipment. I've got 2 pages that are 2 pages this long of just items for the pool. There's so many items to take place in the pool. The big costs are typically the roofs and the structure. That building, that's the pool house, I mean, that's been there a long time, and very little major improvements have been done to it. So the big thing you have there is the roofs. And then all the tables, all the chairs, all the little concession stand thing there, the audio equipment, the security equipment, you've got the showers, you've got the locker rooms, you've got the roof, you've got the little thing on the top, the cupola that's gone, and that was part of the ventilation system. All these things cost money, and that's just the cheap. The easy building is the pool house. When you go over into the concrete block building, where all the equipment is, there's a lot of equipment in that block building. From the pumps, the electrical equipment. The electrical equipment is sitting in a room where all the chemicals are stored. So the electrical equipment that's in there, been in there for 40-something years, is now deteriorating and needs to be replaced. And hopefully you put it on the outside of the building. But you have all the pumps, all the filters, and the stuff is all old. I mean, you can't find replacement parts for a lot of that. So when that pump fails, it's going to be hard to just go out to a store and buy a replacement part because the stuff is old. So you have to plan for this because everything that's out there is going to fail. Even the concrete block building is failing and needs to be some structural repairs done to keep it from failing even more. Little things like there's no gutters on the mechanical equipment room. There's no gutters, and if you look around, you can see the water's running off the roof and dripping onto the concrete apron and damaging the concrete apron because there's no gutters. And then you get to the pool itself, which just is a big hole. It's a big money pit. It costs a lot of money to maintain that pool, and just because it was repaired a few years ago, over a 20-year period, that's what we look at, it's a 20-year period, it's going to need more repairs, more diving boards, more starting blocks, another slide, and anything else that gets added onto the pool as it goes along. Even the dividing lanes, they cost a lot of money. And the concrete itself, if you walk around the pool, you'll see a lot of the concrete is no longer flat. It's sunk, there's a leak in the piping distribution system. That part of the pool is going to be dug up to replace that piping that's broken. So there's a lot of things over there. And then you have the fence. Then you have the baby pool. Then you have the chemical system for the baby pool. So it just goes on and on and on, the amount of money that you need. And the one big unknown that we have to fight all the time is inflation. Everything costs a certain amount today, but what's the inflation rate going to be over the next 20 years? Take a guess. You know, we have one community that actually gave me the inflation rate to 6 decimal places, so they must know what it is. But otherwise, we're just picking a number that we hope we're guessing right. So we factor in inflation, you factor in how much money you have in the bank, and we factor in all the interest that you're earning on that money in the bank, which isn't very much. And so we go in, we look at everything, we measure everything, we give a unit cost of what it's going to take to replace it today that we put in, how long it's going to last. I don't know what the next slide is. How long it's going to last, and how many years before you're going to need to do something. And then we do the calculation of how much money you're going to need for the next 20 years by year by year by year. And unfortunately, you're playing catch up with your money. So right now, you're behind the power curve on the money, and you have to increase your contribution rate, if nothing else, just to comply with the state laws. And that's at a bare minimum to comply with the state law. But you've got to collect the money so you can maintain the pool. Because if you don't do maintenance, and this is the biggest negative we see in all the communities we look at, if you don't do maintenance, it falls apart a lot faster, and it's a lot more expensive to fix it than it is to do preventive maintenance. So we factor in that you need to do preventive maintenance on all these items in order to keep the pool system working. Because if it doesn't work, nobody goes to the pool and people are not happy. So when we do all these things, you can see that the money, the real big money goes into the pool equipment. There's a lot of pool equipment over there that's hidden in those buildings. And then you have a lot of mechanical cost. Amenities are the tables, the chairs, all these things that are floating around. Chairs, those little web chairs are not cheap if you go out to buy them. I mean, Oddbox is down on sale, that's right, they always do, but they only last one season, and then you gotta buy them again. So there's a lot of amenities and others things. We have some of the asphalt, responsible for some of the asphalt. You have fences that are gonna need to be painted or replaced. The electrical items coming in, gotta be upgraded. And then you've got the starting blocks, the diving boards, the slide, the pump for the slide. All those things got figured in, and then we come up with how much money is it going to take and how much money you need year by year. So if you do nothing, this is what the cash flow looks like if you do nothing. If you just say, we're not going to do anything, we're just going to let it go, you get down to the point at the bottom here where you're almost $750,000 in the hole. So you need to be starting saving your money to make this a positive cash flow instead of a negative cash flow. Because if you took this to the bank, they're going to say, obviously, you're not putting enough money aside. The graphic says you're not putting enough money aside if you're going to be $750,000 in the hole. So we come up with a plan. We do a lot of calculations because you can solve this riddle in various ways. And we talk about how much money you got in the reserve fund starting out today, which is 0. And then you start saying, how much money do we start putting in, and how does that affect how much money we've got in the bank? So you can see at the very, very beginning, you're starting to put it in, and you've got a lot of capital items. And when I did the math, I had to ignore some of the guidance I was given because the board wanted to do a lot of stuff immediately. And with $0, you can't do that. So I had to force things back into the future just to get you started to do the things that had to be done immediately. And the items that they wanted to do immediately, sometimes you just have to postpone it. Like the roof. The roof is horrible on that clubhouse. But if it leaks, it doesn't ruin anybody's inside of their house. So you can delay the roof, but if the pool's leaking, you got to fix the pool. So we move things around to go with my best engineering judgment of what needs to be done first, second, third, as far as keeping the pool open and operational, and maybe delay buying the new chairs. So we look at this, and you can see with the $60 per unit per year, which is pretty reasonable compared to other communities that we see. You start out, and here we are at year 5 right here, and you've got a lot of money, but if you continue to go at year 20, you've got a lot of money, and that's why in the warranty deed explanation that was just given, they talked about in 5 years you reevaluate the situation and see what you really need to do, because we're guessing on inflation and a lot of things. But it shows that if you put the $60 per unit per year, you end up with a lot of money, and that's why it's good. We tell all these communities you need to reevaluate the situation in 5 years because things change. And people want things to be different because of one reason or another. And that's why you reevaluate everything in 5 years, just to keep it on track with what's really supposed to be going on. Okay? So we just did another community just like yours, almost identical to yours. And their annual fee, $525 a year per unit. And they've got the same thing you do with a little, not even an enclosed clubhouse, just a place with bathrooms and a place with a concession stand and a big pool. And that's what they're working on, $525 a year. So $60 to me was a reasonable number. But I don't live here, and I'm not going to tell you where I live. And I do the math, and I do the engineering to say this is what works. Okay? I said I was close to the exit just in case.
All right, so you hit me again, and sticking with the Star Wars theme, it's episode 2 of the Reserve Study. So Art did a great job, and it was just, it was eye-opening. You start looking at all the nooks and crannies that you take for granted, and you see a lot of things that you didn't see. So I'm going to kind of talk about, we took the Reserve Study, and then how did we get to where we're going? Please. So I'm going to talk about a few things here. First of all, we've got a reserve study, and then we've got a reality study. This is kind of some of the stuff Art talked about. What's not included in the reserve study? What are the end goals? I mean, we can't just pick a number out of thin air, throw a dart at it, and say, let's go. We got to have some rules around this and end goals. How did we get to $60? And then there's this whole 5% kicker thing going on too. So first off, reserve versus reality. First, in the reserve study, everything breaks on schedule. We say 3 years, third year, check, it broke. Nope. Things break whenever they want to. If you have AAA, you understand that. Second of all, in the reserve, we set inflation at 3%. That's reasonable. That's probably what economists would tell you. But if you've gone to the grocery store lately, 3%, not so accurate anymore. 100% of the residents pay on time? Maybe not. We don't know. So what's not included in the reserve study? There's no necessarily, there's nothing in our study that says you've got to have X dollars on hand at any given time. If you think about your escrow account in your home, it's allowed to bounce pretty darn close to zero, and then they want you to pick it back up again. Maybe that's not the best idea for the reserves in something like this. Secondly, there's, we incur fixed costs every year regardless of what we do. Open the pool, close the pool, it's all that stuff. We've got to pay property taxes. We've got to pay insurance. We have all these expenses that are every year, whether we like them or not. So once we started taking all this into account, we tried to set a few goals. And the goals that we set were, we got to meet the goal, we got to meet the requirements of the reserve study. Art did all that work. We got to follow what he's saying to us and use that, because obviously it's a pretty important document. We've got to cover the fixed costs of the association every year. We can't just run into the black or run into the red constantly. It's probably reasonable to keep a certain minimum value of cash on hand in case something does break out of sequence. For the purpose of this, we set it at $30,000. The largest expense on the reserve study is the pool fence. That's $75,000, but odds are the whole pool fence isn't going to fall down in one fell swoop. So the next biggest expense, $30,000. So that's kind of where we budgeted that, cash reserve at. We've kind of talked about this a few times too. We don't want a giant pile of cash. You really don't want to be sitting on $750,000, $500,000. That's a lot of money, and quite honestly, I don't think we know what to do with it. Secondly, we've got to hedge against excessive inflation and the unexpected. We don't know what 5 years brings. We don't know what 10 years brings. We don't know what 20 years brings. So basically, we built a bunch of models. We took the reserve study. We took the annual things that we've got to fund. We said we wanted this $30,000 cash reserve. We wanted to keep cash at a minimum. And we just started plugging in $50 fee, $60 fee, $70 fee, and then checked it against the goals. So $50 fee is where we started out with this whole thing. Does it fund the reserve study? No. At 20 years, we would be 74,000 in the negative. Would we have a cash reserve? No. Obviously, if we're 74 in the hole, we don't have 30,000 lying around. Minimal cash. Well, yeah, we have minimal cash because we don't have any. And lastly, we still would have the 5% thing, so we would be able to hedge, but it still doesn't work out in the end. $60. Yes. We have a balance of about $90,000 at the end of 20 years, assuming everything goes like we think it's going to. $30,000 cash reserve, kinda. The only time it fails that test is the two times over the 20 years that we've got to spend the $30,000 anyway. So odds are we're not gonna fix it because it broke, and then in 30 days have to fix it again. So we're probably pretty safe there. Minimal cash. That plan maxes out at about $200,000, would be the most cash on hand we'd ever possibly generate. And we still would have the inflation hedge. Just to kind of give you, more about where we, so $70. Let's take it one step further. Sure, we fund the reserve balance. We'd have $253,000 at the end. It's just kind of the power of how this all pulls together. $30,000 cash reserve, you betcha. Minimal cash, not so much. Now we're sitting on $350,000. That's not so fun anymore. And we still do have the inflation hedge. So all in, that's kind of how we got to the $60 number. And this is something, we've tried to build these models in so that every year, every 5 years, we can rerun all these scenarios and say $60 and present this same set of tests to you all and say, this is where we land. And prove this out year after year, because if we're going to start collecting all this money, we've got to prove that it's needed and necessary and that we're spending it wisely. Next one, kind of the wrap up. So there's this 5% increase thing flying around. It's ultimately to hedge against inflation in the unexpected. A few years inflation kicks in 5, 6, 7%. The example Art gave us, roofing materials. Most everything is stayed at 3%, but if you've ever had a roof put on lately, roofing materials have gone up 30% in the past few years because shingles, oil, so on and so forth. So suddenly your roofs cost way more than you expect. So we've got a little bit of a cushion there in case we would need it down the line. It is not automatic. Do not think that our plan is to, next year it's 5% more, next year it's 5% more. That's not what we're saying. It's there if we need it, and we're going to have to prove it if we need it. So the short of it is, the annual fee can never increase more than 5% over the current year. If we need to go more than that, then 51% of the residents would have to be on board, written signatures like we're going to have to do. So the example is, in 2019, $60 is the fee. The maximum fee in 2020 is $63, because 5% of the 60 is $3. The other thing on this is if the fee would ever go down for whatever reason, say we get really lucky and things last a little longer, things get cheaper, I don't know, sometimes lightning is in a bottle. If we would set it to, say, $50 one year, next year's fee could only be $50 plus 5% at a maximum. So just because we've gone backwards doesn't mean we can then make it all up in 3 or 5 years. So we're not going to see, it's 5% of whatever the previous year's fee was, period. And I think that is all I have. The one thing that I will say is, one thing that I do want to do is try and get together a committee of residents that think this kind of stuff is fun and exciting. I know it's probably a limited group of us, but the reality is as we go through capital expenditures and having to replace electrical, we're going to have to pick an electrical contractor. We're going to have to decide between, do we want this electrical type parts? Do we want that electrical type parts? This one has a 20-year warranty, but it's 10% more expensive. Is it all worth it? These are the decisions that we as a group are going to have to make. And so if anybody would be interested in helping out with something like that, please write your name down and say, Wes, call me, or Wes, send me an email, and I'll be sure to get in touch with you, because this fun is just, I gotta share it. So next up is going to be Renee, and she's going to kind of hit the 2014-2015 budget.
Even more fun. I just
just want to say for the record, I painted most of the baby pool fence, and I am not about to paint the entire outside fence of the pool. So. Okay, so the first slide. So the budget that you're going to see is set up with a July 1st to June 30th fiscal year. In going through the budget, you'll be seeing two scenarios, one that reflects the proposed assessment changes and the other without changes. Next. So first we'll look at the income. The budgets are identical except for the initial homeowner assessment payment when someone buys a home in Amherst, and then the annual assessment lines. So the initial fee is about $10,000 less in this column right here because it is set at the rate that it currently is $200 instead of the proposed $500, which would generate this amount. And the annual fee is zeroed out here. So that's the end. So what does that mean to expenses? So looking at our operating expenses, they stay the same in the two budgets. And next slide. Thought it would be good to pull out the income that we generate from income-related operating expenses to the total operating expenses. So things like pool memberships, concession sales, pool events and rental fees, swim lessons, swim team fees. Our total income there is almost $72,000 projected. Total expenses, those operating budget expenses, come in at just over $67,000. The administration expenses have been adjusted. So without the assessment, that's this column, there would be less accounting fees. It also assumes less office supplies, printing and postage, basically less communication, and as it has been, the streetmen's have been paying for our web domain for years, so we even zeroed out web expenses. Don't know how much we're going to be able to lean on them. Next slide. The fixed expenses are fixed, so there's no changes between the two budgets. The bottom one is the reserve expenditures, if needed, show projected spending here with the assessment budget, but if we don't do the annual assessment, then we would not have any funds for doing capital improvements and repairs. Next slide. The slide on the bottom shows, okay. All right, this is kind of the bottom line of the two scenarios. So with the proposed budget that the board is putting forward, we would find ourselves at the end with almost $37,000 in reserve, with almost a $3,000 profit. Without the assessment, we're looking at no reserve balance, so we wouldn't be meeting our obligation, and we'd actually be in the hole almost $7,700.
I have a question. I need to understand the math real quick. Is that 3,000 including the 36 in? So we're coming up from a hole of 36, or would that be 3940 total, but 3,000 is the profit?
This is what is set aside for the reserve.
Okay.
So
the profit loss is the operating expenses versus
the other income.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
It looks like we're going to have a time with this. Do we have budgetary questions out there?
Can you speak up? you ever ask them a question so we can hear back here?
Or I can repeat them.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you please stand up, tell us who you are, where you live?
I'm Cindy Dawson. I live on Millfield. In the without assessment, you have withdrawn the upfront fee, the closing cost. Is that correct? Did that screen show correctly? You zeroed it out?
No, well, the annual assessment I zeroed out.
Okay, so the annual assessment, not the
Yeah.
upfront.
That's the homeowners. When you buy a home, that's the line item for that.
Okay, and that's assuming how many?
35.
35. Thank you.
Yes.
Ben Blue, I live on Millfield too. 900, 800 right?
Yes, the 908 homes are in Anchorage.
Okay. My understanding is Spring Hollow and Bourbon Trace also use the pool, is that correct?
Yes, they do. Well, they don't, if they have bought it, yeah, if they pay their pool membership and they've paid, they've joined the AVRA.
Which leads to the next question is, we have a way to levy capital, any kind of reserve requirement on that, right?
No.
No, but in the future,
The question I have, what it takes to.
right, so if you would live in River Trace and you want to come to the pool, the first step is you pay, right now it's a $200 fee to join the AVRA as kind of call them an associate member, I guess is probably the proper term. They don't have voting rights, they don't have anything like that. Then they have to pay whatever pool membership fee would fit their needs, family, grandparents, so on and so forth, and et cetera. Going down the road, if we do move into an annual assessment situation, then we're probably going to have to look at, you know, there's a resident rate for the pool and a non-resident rate, or a non-owner and a non-payer, because to your point, it's not fair that someone from River Trace could come to the pool for $70 a year cheaper, or $60 a year cheaper than the neighbor. One-time fee, yes.
That's equivalent to the homeowners.
Excuse me, yes. Theoretically, it does move to 500.
I have a question. My name is Shirley. I live on Knoxville. And first of all, thank you to the people that have put a lot of time and effort into all of this. My question is, what's like the plan B? What if 51% of the 908 homes do not approve this? What is the plan B for the pool?
I mean, unfortunately, the plan B is we keep trying until we get it right, because eventually this thing goes boom if nothing changes. It's kind of been going that way, and that's why we're trying to put a stop to this and fix it permanently and get it right. So that's the risk. I know one of the questions that has come up quite often, and Art, if you can come up for a moment, we get to a lot of discussion about, you know, can we just close the pool and pave it over, or, you know, make it a giant garden, I don't know, a big picnic area, something like that. And Art looked into that as part of the reserve special.
We did a calculation of what it would cost to fill it in. You know, take down the buildings, fill it in, make it a football field, whatever it is. And the problem is, we do have a number, and the problem is, in order to do that, you got to get 51% of the people to vote, that can't vote, to approve it, because you're changing the bylaws, or whatever the fees, whatever the name of the document is. You're changing that, and it takes 51% of the people to change it. So, my experience in other communities, you can't get 51% of the people to vote, much less vote for one thing. But we got a number. We get a number? It's $300,000 to close the pool, to fill it in, get rid of all the junk that's there, and donate the chairs to
And that would be assessed immediately, would it not?
So that's a one-time cost you got to come up with it that day.
Yeah.
That's right. You just can't do it for 10 years. You got to pay that day. So it's a big dollar amount that you don't have.
Thanks, sir. We're going to get back on track here so we don't lose this thing. Renee, thank you for the budget. Next up is going to be Karen. You run us 4 or 5 slides. Karen's going to talk about what's next, and then we'll jump back into some questions.
been a difficult process, but by far the worst part for me is talking into a microphone. So bear with me, please. What's next? We've had a few neighbors who have volunteered to help collect signatures. We may need to recruit a few more. We might need to be asking some extra people to help out with that. I'd like to introduce Stephen Helba. He's in the back of the room. Back there. He's volunteered to help organize and oversee these ambassadors who are going to go around and help collect signatures. He's going to help them disseminate information and keep track of the data and the signatures and the progress that everyone is making throughout the process. So I appreciate that. And the next step will be the ambassadors will be distributing an information packet. And the packet will include the warranty deed revisions with that last bit of script that we need, a copy of the 2014 and 15 budget, and the frequently asked questions that we've been receiving during this whole process. So that might help explain a few things. And they're going to be going to each household and offering either a hard copy of this packet or directions for how to find the information if the resident would rather access that information online. And there'll be a place where you can sign off that you've received your packet or that you're going to look online for that. And we're hoping to have that part of this process done by May 15th. There's a lot of homes, and we don't have all our ambassadors yet, so it's ambitious, but we're going to try and have all that information out by May 15th. The ambassadors will either then, at that time, collect a signature if the resident is ready, or they might have to revisit that house at a later date if the resident needs more time to look over the material and make sure they understand it. Our goal is to have the signatures, that whole process, completed by the last week of June. Some people have asked what happens if one of the owners of the house wants to sign and the other does not. And I'm pretty sure that none of us wants to get involved in that discussion. So we just want to tell you that it's just one homeowner needs to sign. That's all we need. So we can race each other to the door.
With the name on the deed.
Right, the name has to be on the deed. If a homeowner wants to support the revisions for the warranty deeds, the ambassador will definitely provide the petition for them to sign. We would like to visit every home in Amherst during this whole process. That's the goal. Once that is completed, we have to verify the signatures. We have to make sure the signature is a deeded owner. We have some renters. We need to make sure we're in touch with the owner of the house. And then when that whole process is completed, we'll make sure that we do post or have the signatures available for people to see. And we're working on, like Wes said, trying to get a place on our website that we can post that. Otherwise, that will be in the library to access. Do the signatures. And we will, of course, be letting people know how things go when we're all done.
You say we have to file all the signatures with the county recorder.
Right. After we verify them, we have to file all of the signatures with the county recorder.
There's an expense per page on each page.
Right, which is why we're trying to keep the ambassadors down to a sort of a minimum, because we have to fill every page. There's a cost of $20 to $30 per page or something. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're keeping track of everything that's going on and all the homes that are being visited. Yes, did you want to?
Just one thing, you need to register as solicitors.
Yeah, we have that QR code.
Okay,
Yeah.
You cannot knock on a door that says no solicitors. So how do you?
Well, we either have to get in contact with them by phone or email. We have a lot of emails, and maybe we'll put a notice up on the website, make sure that it's happens.
So he was pointing out that we need to have permits to walk around and knock on doors, and that if a house has no soliciting on the door, that we really shouldn't be knocking on that. So if you'd like to make your voice known with this, and you have a no soliciting sign on your door, perhaps you could email us and let us know so that we can get in touch with you a different way. Yes?
I'm just wondering.
Yes, Ms. Walker?
Judith Walker on that.
Judith, I know a printer. And I know a printer that has sticky notes. Okay, and I can make a slip just like the UPS. Your package was left in the bushes. But we're going to make you sign for this packet. So, you know, we got to get the signature. We're really trying to make sure that everybody gets a chance to look at this information. So anyway, that's the answer to that.
Thanks, Karen. So we did it. We are 15 minutes early, but we're not going to let you leave yet. So we're going to take questions. We're going to take questions for probably 10 minutes. Just got a few closing remarks, and then we need to be out of here because school needs us out by 9 promptly. So, rules for questions. Rule number 1, you stand up. Rule number 2, you tell us your name and where you live. And then go ahead and ask your question, and we will do our best to respond as we can. Okay, we got a stander, so knock yourself out.
Milford Avenue.
And your name?
Keith.
Keith.
Thanks for all the information. Thanks for all the hard work. Was there a demand study? Because when they built the pool, it wasn't a rec center. It wasn't a housing pool. Demand was totally different when we built this for this area. Now there is. There's other opportunities. And with the population changing in our neighborhoods all the time, what really is the demand? Because it's not the same as when we first built this